balance.
And by the way, are we okay with time? I have a few more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time.
I got no shows until 2021. Everything I've had has been moved to 2021, so I'm good. Appreciate it.
Well, the reason I asked though that question of South versus North, and I can
Right.
only speak for myself, is that you think, well, that happens in the South, or that happened a while ago,
Mm-hmm.
or but what I'm learning and what I learned as a journalist, but also learning now because I'm realizing that I'm quite frankly daft at some of these issues, is that it may not look the same, but it certainly is still happening in different forms and fashions. Am
Right.
I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. And like I said, here there is blatant. Here it lay dormant, and it
Mm-hmm.
just and I'll give you a prime example. I've seen it, quite frankly, since the day I showed up. Just bits and pieces, and I knew, like I said, when I was a freshman, I was in St. Cloud. I had a gun pulled on me, and I was called. This was 6 weeks of me showing up in town, and I was with three of my friends, two from Minnetonka, one from Bloomington, and sure enough, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be dead, but I think he would have beat the crap out of me with it, him and his buddy. But we found them, and they got what they deserved, and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, I knew it could happen, right? So over time, I think that it just lay dormant. And then when I really saw it was, 4 years ago. I saw it probably like 2015 when all this stuff started up, and this is not political. It's just when things start bubbling up on Facebook, and some of the people that I thought I've been knowing for a long time, some of the stuff that they said, some of the things I found out they believed, and I was just like, wait a minute here. I mean, if you believe that, then buddy, there's no way you and I could be friends. And this is not political. This is just belief. This is character. And I have always been the best version of myself around people. I've always been the best version of myself on social media. I've always been the best version of myself on the stage. When I worked in the hospitality industry, because I found out very early in life, and my mother taught me that, and I learned it from watching my mother probably more than my father, that we're not given the privilege to show people who we really are. Sometimes we can't snap. We don't have that privilege. We can do it, and some of us slip and do it, but then they go, see, that's who they are. And that's not who we are. But at some point you can't take it no more. It boils up. And I watched my mother year in and year out do the same thing with us. When she walked, and she said nice things to us every day. She tried to make us feel worthy of, being who we are. But as you see things starting to change, for me, was back in probably 2014, 2015, when it really ramped up, and I couldn't take it anymore. I had some real sit downs with some of the people that I knew, some of my friends. And I said, hey, you guys got to tell me why you're saying this type of stuff. Why are you repeating this? Why are you forwarding this on to me? Do you not know who I am? And I don't want people to look at me as one of the good ones. They like to say that, yeah, but that's not about you. You're not like that. Well, I'm not the only one that's not like that. You know what I mean? I don't know what like that is. You know what I mean? I've had people say this to me before, Jay, where they say, like, I don't see color. And that's that's the worst thing you can say to a Black person, because somehow you don't have no idea what it took for us, how we got here, how do we got in front of you, what it took for us to get there, to stand in front of you, for you to say, I don't see color. You know, that's just a way for you to make yourself feel good about the decisions that you make. So if it comes down to it, well, at least I didn't see color. Well, you did. You have to see color. I want you to see color because I want you to see me. And if you don't see color, then there's no way you can see me without seeing my color.
Mm.
You know, that's be like looking at you and saying, hey, I don't see color. I know for a fact you're white. I can see it. I'm not going to pretend. Do I care that you're white? No, I accept that you're white because you are, but that shouldn't matter. But don't deny me my color, because that's who I am. That's really who I am. And people say, well, you know, you never hear people say that white people transcend color. It's always black people. He transcends, you know, color. No, you can't transcend color. You're either black or you're not. No matter how, you know, he talks nice, or he has very good verbiage, or is, you know, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I've seen it boil, and here's where we're at right now. We're at now where people are trying to convince us that rebel flags, Confederate flags, meant something totally different. When I grew up with that flag, Jay, I grew up with the Confederate flag, and I grew up with the American flag. And trust me on this, and I know people have a hard time with the flag, but I was forced to stand up and pledge allegiance to a flag that did not represent me when I sat down after that. I still got in the back of the line to go to the cafeteria. I was still was a, you know, black kid still was getting on the bus after all the white kids got on the bus. You know, how is that one nation under God? How is that? How are we the same as you? I got to stand and I pledge allegiance to the exact same flag you did, but somehow or another you were treated way different. I can see why, you know, why people say I love the flag, because, you know, it's like an optimist. They tell you to cheer up when everything is going their way.
Mm.
You know, I mean, it's your, and I get what the Confederate flag meant. It was, I know exactly what it was, and real people know what it meant. You know, so don't try to convince us, you know, that it was meant something totally different, or it was about heritage. You know, what heritage? You know.
Yeah. When you hear that, and this is a debate that's been happening, but especially intensified over the last several weeks and months about the Confederate flags and statues. I mean, what are you thinking about when you hear the argument about all this?
I'm like a lot of people. I think why do we even have statues of these people? And people they won't sit and read about Reconstruction. No one wants to believe it, but Reconstruction was Reconstruction. And people don't understand it. You know, things flipped over during Reconstruction. And if you read about it, you'll see around about 64, that's when things started to change. And the parties literally, and people don't want to believe that the parties flipped. I know they did, because I grew up as a kid under Jeff Sessions and his father in Alabama. I understand at the time who they were, and I know who they are now. You understand? So when you black kids go to Robert E. Lee school. I mean, you literally going to a school of a man who fought to keep you in slavery. Get it? I don't even know how that made sense. They would build statues, and they have Confederate statues in states that was not a part of the Confederacy. So what does that tell you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, they put up those statues long after the Civil War, way after, like way after. It had nothing to do with that. What it had to do was remind you of who they are, you know, and you don't get to fly your flag when you lose. We don't fly losers' flags. I mean, the Confederate flag fought the American flag. And I don't get how people don't understand that. People say states' rights. That was not states' rights. It had nothing to do with states' rights. It had to do with human rights. And it was wrong. And people say, well, are they going to tear down Washington's? No, no. Yeah, we know he owned slaves, Jefferson. Yes. But you don't wind up putting up, they didn't fight against this country to keep the slaves. That's what people don't understand. You know, I mean, I just think that until all this stuff is gone, until they take down the flags, until they take down these Confederate monuments, and that's what my dad always taught me, be careful who you put on a pedestal, son, because, you know, behind, you know, everybody has a closet and you don't know what's in it until somebody cracked the door open. And now that people are finding out, you'd be surprised how many people didn't know. Because I have so many relatives that are in the military, and they hate it going to these bases that were named after Confederates. So people didn't even know that. Because a lot of people don't want to know the real American history. Mm-hmm. And American history, when you read the whole story, I grew up all my life. And it wasn't until I was in college where I learned Black history, other than what my mom and dad told me. I didn't know until I was, I want to say 2013, that I was born in a city that was the last slave ship, you know, was docked. Well, they brought in slaves long after they should have been done. And it was docked in Mobile, Alabama. There's a book about it. And my mother and my grandmother are buried there. They were born there, you know, and the last surviving member of that slave ship is buried there, you know. And they started Africa Town. That was the name of the city I was born in. They renamed it Plateau by the time I was born, but it was literally Africa Town, and it's been changed back to African Town now, and has a museum there. I haven't been home in a long time, so I'm heading back home hopefully next year. And I want to go visit because I've not visited the museum. I grew up in that town. I saw the homes that they built. You know what I mean? My mother was born in 1925. This guy didn't died at 27 or 29. My grandmother would have known him, you know? And that's just, he was the last descendant of the people on that Clotilda. That was the name of the ship.
Wow.
You know, so I didn't know that because they don't teach that history. You know, there's so much Black history that people don't know, and if they did, it would blow them away. You know.
You know what? I've sorry to interrupt, but I just thought of this, and I'm going to forget it if I don't. What I felt ashamed about recently of history, I had no idea about Tulsa. None. And that's a terrorist incident. That's like
Black Wall Street.
I mean, I read this shocked, but also ashamed of myself. That why don't I know this? And that gets to your point about about all this history. It doesn't mean we're hateful of where we live. It means we're honoring everything that we lived.
Right. And that's you got to be honest with yourselves, though. You know what I mean? And that's what history is all about, is being 100% honest about history. Mm-hmm. And we're not. They're actually still trying to change books. I mean, you look at like Juneteenth. You think about how many people didn't know about Juneteenth. Mm-hmm. I grew up with Juneteenth. As a kid, I've always known about Juneteenth. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of people that's like, why? I didn't know anything. Why are they talking about Juneteenth?
Until I became a journalist and started covering Juneteenth, I remember saying, well, what's Juneteenth? And again, another moment of life, like how felt shame.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we live and we learn. Mm-hmm. You know, and but if you go back and you think about why there was a Juneteenth, and then you think to yourself, oh my God, I mean, how could they get away with that? How do they do that? Because, you know, Texas, just people took all their slaves and hid them in Texas, hoping that they would win the war. And then when they didn't, when they freed the slaves, Texas was the last state. Like there was people were freed long before they knew it.
Mm.
They were the last group of slaves to say that was told that they were free. How sad is that? You know, and it just
Sorry, that was my dog wagging his ears. If you heard that flap in the background,
that's
perfectly.
hilarious. He did.
You mentioned a little bit ago of not seeing people who look like you in the seats at Target Center or Target Field or in the cars that
Right.
you own, or in sharing in what others white people have as much.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do for you when you don't see people that look like you as much?
It gives me that whole drive again, man. It makes me want to work hard. I mentor a lot of young African American men. I do, and I try to tell them, it's up to you guys. It's generational, man. We just, it's the whole each one teach one. If we keep doing that, we're gonna find out we got the sports covered. It's just that we can't get the coaches and we can't get the general manager's jobs. We can't get the president's job. We can't get the courtside seats. We can't keep the, you know what I mean? The reporters
and people on TV. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like I said, where I get my news from, I look down, I grew up in Mobile. Honestly, when I came to Minnesota, I mean, we had, I think my buzz just went out. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Okay.
When I look at TV, and don't get me wrong, like when I first came here, like I remember I would watch TV and watch the news, and if the first newscast I watched and I saw a black person, that was the news I was going to watch. You know what I mean? I don't need the whole cast to be, but it's like, how do you not have? I mean, it's like if you in Minneapolis, and I remember when I was at St. Cloud State, they said we're going to go to the cities. They never said Minneapolis; I always said the cities. We're going to go to the cities this weekend. So that's how I got to know Robin Robinson. That's how I got to know Roxanne Battle. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like those were like, then that's why I would watch those news because I wanted to see people that look like me. When I go down, I listen to KMOJ because it reminds me, you know what I mean? Like if KMOJ had 100,000 watts, they'd be the #1 station forever. You know what I mean? I would listen to stations that had DJs that tried to sound black. But, like I'll never forget the first time I met Tony Fly. I'm like, dude, you're not even black. But you listen to him on the radio, he sounded really black, right? So I got to know him. And so when I worked in radio in Minneapolis, I mean, it was just like Freddie Bell and I, and that was it. You know what I mean? And we worked at Solid Gold Soul, and they would never, I mean, we had a really good listening audience, and it was great. But at the end of the day, like I said, it was always, every time I saw it, it made me want to work harder. And next door, they were 100,000 watts, but they were like butt naked last in ratings. You know what I mean? It's like, if we could flip, if we were over there and they gave us this station and put us over there, we would kill, because we had the music, we had the conversation, we had the interviews, we had all the, when all the plays were coming into Minneapolis at the time, like the Broadway plays, Tyler Perry was touring all these shows, and then the Temptation was in town. We always had them at the radio station, Solid Gold Soul. And if we'd have had 100,000 watts, we'd have been blowing up, but we never did. So, you know what I mean? But we were never given those opportunities that everybody else seemed to be getting, even though they had to change books every 6 months. They were a different call sign, or they were playing different music, trying to find a genre that they can, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then when I look at the news every single night, it was the same thing over and over and over again. And you see, an African American every once in a while, but it's like, this is Minneapolis. I mean, you got demographics that are just off the charts around here. So at some point, these people need to be represented.
Yeah.
You know, but when you go to a Timberwolves game and you see the starting lineup, they're represented. You know what I mean?
And it's
You
important to
see,
see yourself. Is that what you're saying? It's
it
important,
is. It's very
whether
important
it's
to
at
see
the
yourself.
someone teaching you, whether it's someone on TV, whether it's someone in leadership, whatever.
Every job I've ever had, that brings me full circle the way you just asked me. Every job I've ever had, I've tried to be an example to the kid that was working under me to see that, look, you can get there, you can
Mm-hmm.
beat it. When I went from a player to assistant coach, then the players look down the bench and they see a black coach sitting down there going, okay, you know, I recruited some of the best, helped recruited some of the best kids that played at St. Cloud State, you know, and they tell me to this day, if it wasn't for you, I don't know how we would have made it, you know, because, you know, I had a coach tell me one time, you know, he was talking to me about these black kids, and I was telling him this is true. And he said, I said, well, this is a situation he's having. He goes, well, that's not what they're telling me. I said, well, coach, they're not going to tell you. They're going to tell me. And he said, Willie, I've been working with black kids for 27 years. And I said, coach, I've been black for 30.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time he looked at me. He goes, that's the first time I think that made sense to me that someone said that to me. I said, because you never said it to a black person. I said, you don't get to have experience with black people just for working with them. You need to be really black to have the experience of being black. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
how an African American kid will come and say things to me that he won't come and say to you. You know, he gonna tell me the real truth. He's gonna tell you what you need to hear. It's the same thing where, like when they're around me, they're different. They talk different. When they're around you, they talk totally different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like black kids know they're comfortable around me, so they can say what they want to say. They can be themselves. But when they're around you, and if I'm there, they'll flip flop between. You know, we find that happy medium to be with our white friends and our black friends at the same time to make everybody comfortable. You know, so you don't think I done flipped the script and went on their side and I'm not on your side.
Yeah.
Like I would come home from college and all my friends be like, "Why you talk so funny?" Because my dialect changed when I came to Minnesota. And, you know, when you come back to Alabama, you got to find that Alabama, you know, dialect back.
Is that must be tiresome, exhausting. I mean,
It
to
it
have to
is.
live different lives depending on who's in front of you.
It is, man. I'll be honest with you. It's very hard when we're around people that how we, again, we try to be the best versions of ourselves, you know, to make you comfortable. It's, you know, you try to say the right things, you try to dress a certain way, you try to be a certain way and try to pretend like stuff don't bother you, you know, just to get through the day. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And to hear people say stuff like sometimes I'd be around, like even like my neighbors, I just moved into a brand new neighborhood. You know, when you walk through the neighborhood, you know, it's like, what do I wear? Do I want to wear this? This looks aggressive. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I want to, you know, you want to be yourself, but you also, you know, you want to come off as approachable, you know, and I am, man. I wave at neighbors and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And there's still people that will walk by you and won't even make eye contact. And you think to yourself, how do you do that? How do you live in a neighborhood and not make eye contact with your neighbors when you know that's your neighbor?
Yeah.
Not next door neighbor, but lives like 3-4 houses down.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very hard trying to be someone else around someone else, you know, when you're not being yourself. It's very hard. But we do it. We've been doing it for forever because we don't have a chance. We don't have the luxury of making mistakes like most people. We make one mistake and that's it. We're done. And that's the truth. We don't get that luxury of, you know, you'll get it right next time. You know, there's no next time. So I try very hard to, you try to be humble, but at some point, you know, you got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes you hang out with your friends and like the other day I went golfing and it was me and a couple of kids that I mentored at St. Cloud, African American kids, and a former Viking NFL player, and we all went golfing. And you know, you got 4 black guys on a golf course, and you know, and I'm not bragging, but we're all really good, you know, and you know, you saw people looking at us and just and just assuming that we were all athletes, ex, ball players and stuff like that, and just not just working guys, not a comedian, not one that runs homes for disabled kids, not one who's a athletic director. One is a comedian. They just assume we were all pro ball players. You know what I mean? Because that's what they think of Black people. Like if I saw a bunch of white guys playing that were really good, I would say, "Oh, them guys must be on the PGA." I don't care how good you are. If you're playing on Monday at the Wild, there's a pretty good chance you're not in the PGA. I'm just saying. But you know what I mean? And it's stereotyping still because they just assume, And again, we all got the outfits on, and I mean, we all did play. We played, but that's not who we are anymore. One of us was, and the other three were not. But because we all look like we did, they just assumed that we did, and you just really shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that's why I said so. We constantly got to be on our best behavior. When we're out just golfing, especially it's four of us. And then when you have the ranger following you around for a little bit too, we were at a nice golf course. And so that was kind of awkward. Like, what do you want?
Can I help you? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then he was, and there was, I didn't want to be, I'm not going to name the course I was at because I'm a member there. But I did bring it to their attention. Because he literally was like, so one of your guys a member here, and I'm like, yeah, like you would think in the clubhouse they would ask that, you know what I mean? So like, come on, dude, like we are, I'll say one of us, I say one of us is a member. I say it's me. And I told him that, and they talked to him. He came up to me in the parking lot and apologized. He said, "I just started. I didn't know you." And I told him, I said, "That's fine." But again, it doesn't really matter. It was four of us. We were all on the golf course, and we checked in. So it's not like we just grabbed carts, put our you tee off right there. They could see us. So, but anyway, at the end of the day, it was cool. But I'm just saying I could have snapped, but we can't. We can't do that. We can't get angry, But if you look at what's going on in the world today and see how many people, how many videos you need to see of people snapping because they won't even wear a mask.
Yeah.
But you don't see Black people doing that. You don't see Black people yelling because they have to wear a mask. They just don't. There are no videos of somebody going off saying, you're stepping on my rights. I mean, if you're going to step on my rights, let it be, make me wear a mask, but just, let me buy a house. That's what I'm talking about. Let me buy a home. Let me get a job. Let me make equal pay. Let me do stuff like that. But don't, you see where people are getting angry about what we look at and go, why are you mad about that? I mean, that don't even bother us now. We'll wear a mask. But at the end of the day, it's always like, we get mad over other things, man, like people getting choked out to death. That's what we get angry about. But you're going to pitch a fit and throw your food down the middle of the Hy-Vee because they ask you to leave because you're not wearing a mask. And if you don't have one, they give you one for free. You only got to wear it for like 5 minutes. And take it off when you walk back outside. That's all it is. It's sad, man. But we've been marching for a long time. We've been marching for a long time, brother, for things that just equal rights. And here's what I'll tell you. What I don't understand about people is that they always think that, affirmative action. You got affirmative action. You got this. People don't realize everything that Black people fought for is benefit white people more. You've benefited from every single thing that we've ever been given. And we weren't given it. We should have had it. But you've benefited from every single thing. Affirmative action was not just for Black people. People think it was. It just Everybody benefits from it. It's not just a black thing, you know. And I don't get why people don't understand that, you know. So
Yeah. And this leads to my last question. And you talk about you've been marching for a long time, figuratively and literally. And I'm hesitant to ask this in part because I know, a white person saying, what can I do? It's like, well, duh, I've been out here for a while. That's going through my head. I don't want to come off that way, but I'm hoping this is a safe space because I think there's going to be people who watch this and say, I want to be an ally. I want to help. But I feel like I'm overwhelmed, or what little me can do. What should I be doing?
I'm going to tell you the same thing I just told the last fellow I was talking to. Exactly what you're doing right now. Exactly what you're doing right now is talking. The more people like me you talk to, they don't necessarily have to be black, but just and then get their feelings. How do you feel about this stuff? You know what I mean? Because the more we talk about it, the more people are going to understand. See, we've not talked about it, and this is the most we've talked about it now. Probably since Trayvon Martin.
Mm-hmm.
It came to a head, and I think it was a 9-minute video. So you got that guy to think for all the troubles that are happening. And the difference between now and then, and the difference between Trayvon and back when Martin Luther King got killed or assassinated is global. Everybody is talking about it right now. And it's not, when you look at those protesters, that's not just black people protesting. It used to be black people with a sprinkling of white people. It's really salt and pepper right now. It's salt and pepper and spices. It's every different color, every different nationality walking out there right now. Old, young, middle-aged, gay, lesbian, whatever, LBGQT plus, all of that. Everybody is out there marching and saying, it's time to change. Politicians are marching. There are even law enforcement and military that are out there marching because what they saw, you can no longer unsee. What they saw was wrong, and they saw it for their own eyes. And to be blunt, it had to be seen for people to believe it, and that's too bad that you just couldn't take people's word for it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That one was bad. And this went global. It's in every continent. And people know about it now. And you can't hide it. That tape's going to last forever. That man he's going to go down in infamy. He will.
Mm-hmm.
Live in infamy. That's his legacy for the rest of his life, whether he wants it or not. And so is George. That's George's legacy. That's what he left this world, laying on the ground, calling for his mom who was dead. That's when you know that you're going home at that point, man. And I think that I like the conversation I had with the gentleman earlier that I was on with, and talking with you, people who are trying to understand and not give their own point of views, but trying to get other people's point of views, trying to get people to talk about it and be honest about it and be raw about it. I am shocked at this point that I didn't break down and cry, because some of the things that I talk about, I get so emotional when I go back home because it's a lot to unpack, And once I start unpacking, it goes, because when you grow up in a family like I did, where I did, and like I said, you've heard me say this, I grew up in the projects. That's not something they're working on. That's a finished product. They put us there for a reason, and when you put a bunch of people together that have nothing and you give them nothing, what do you expect from that? You know what I mean? And that's what they did. And they treated us like animals, and they expected us to act like animals. And if something wants to happen to us, people go, well, they're animals. What do they expect? And that's what people thought of us, And now you saw who the animal was, That man was laying there, and I want to keep bringing it up, but he was laying there. He was bound. You had 3 people on him, and he stayed there until he stopped breathing. And 3 minutes after he was done breathing, they stayed there. After they checked his pulse, they stayed there until they put him on a gurney and rolled him away, and they gave him no assistance because they knew he was dead. For $20, counterfeit $20 bill. You don't need to die for that. Selling cigarettes, you get choked out and you say he died because he was overweight? No, we saw him getting choked. You know, I see fat people walking around every day. They don't just pass out and die. I mean, we know obesity is, you know, we know that diabetes kills, but I know people that have lived 30, 40 years with diabetes. But if you choke, yeah, that will, you know, that will kill you. And so at the end of the day, Jay, I think what you're doing, because you're very good at what you do, and then that's what you do. That's how you get the word out. Do what you do best, and that's ask questions and get people to talk and open up. And when people listen, hopefully they'll understand why we say Black Lives Matter. You know, and people don't want to hear it because people say, well, all lives matter. And if that was the case, then we would never have to say Black Lives Matter. If all lives matter, we wouldn't have to say that. We wouldn't have to say it. We don't say it because we want to. We say it because we have to. You know.
Well, C, I thank you so much for taking the time. You've been more than generous with your time, and I can't thank you enough. It's been great for me to hear all of this and to understand all of this and begin this reckoning of understanding first, and then hopefully leading to reconciliation at some point. But I hope the people who watch this are in agreement, because I think what you've done here is wonderful, and you didn't have to do it, but you did it anyway, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me, man. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, you as well, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good night.
All right, Jay, you too.